Welcome back. We were talking about polio right before the break, and then we got into the shingles, and we were talking about that drug Zovirax, which is a very good prodrug, and how it's very, very safe to take. So if you feel like you might be having something like that, please get into your practitioner or the urgent care if you can't get into your practitioner to let them hopefully get that to you, because it could prevent you from having post-herpetic neuralgia, which is a lifelong consequence of a late shingles infection. There was a shortage of the vaccine. Now I think it's back in stock. It is quite expensive, and I think it's like everything else over time. It comes back and more accepted by insurances. So if you, and I know Walgreens and some of the other pharmacists, even though I don't like Walgreens prescription issues, they are good with their vaccines. So those pharmacies are able to help you with those particular vaccines, and I suggest you give them a call. And like I said, there's more than just shingles. There's Prevnar 13, which we've talked about, pneumonia. That's now available for adults. So in this cold and flu season, if you have COPD or any lung condition or any chronic condition, diabetes, think about getting the Prevnar 13 and then following it up in a year with the polysaccharide 23, so that you can get the new immune, the total best immune for pneumonia. Okay, so before we had Ray call in, which I do thank you, Ray, for calling in. I do really enjoy, I sometimes don't even prepare slides, because I feel like when we have callers, they'll call in with enough topics, and that'll keep me going for the entire hour, and I can talk on those particular things. But we were talking about gout before Ray called. So the example that I give about gout is, and how you can understand how this happens. If we take a teaspoon of salt and we pour it in water and we stir it up, eventually the salt goes into solution. When it goes into solution, it becomes part of the water, and it ionically binds with it, so it becomes invisible and you never see it. When the water evaporates, the crystals again will form on the side of the glass. And this is exactly what happens with uric acid. If the concentration is low enough, it stays in solution in our body and it never comes out of solution. However, if we become dehydrated for whatever reason, or if the concentration, if I keep pouring enough salt into the water, eventually I saturate it. And when it becomes saturated, the salt will not go into solution. There's not enough water molecules there to take the salt molecule and hide it in between the water molecules. That is what we call, and then so that's going in solution. So, and we can become saturated, and that's what happens when gout. Now, there's two ways that can happen. One, you can become what they call an overproducer of gout, uric acid. So you eat too much in the way of foods, and you produce too much uric acid. In that case, you will, it's like pouring too much salt in the water. It will come out of solution, and once it forms a uric acid crystal, it will do it in a joint or some other fluid collection in your body. And when it does in a joint, it's like someone put a splinter into the joint. The body does not recognize it, does not like it, and is going to try to dissolve that splinter. So if you get a splinter under your finger, eventually it festers and it becomes inflamed. Well, that same process takes place in a joint in a very closed space and becomes very swollen, and a lot of white blood cells. It can become quite a problem, and it brings people to their knees, this type of pain. Now, one of the things happens that a lot of people like to, on the weekend, they may go to a barbecue and they'll eat a lot of rich food, a barbecue, and then they'll drink a few beers. Maybe they'll have more than just two. They'll have 3 or 4. And alcohol basically dehydrates you. It has an what they call a vasopressin thing. It basically makes you go to the bathroom a lot more. Not like a diuretic in the sense of how it works, but it does the same thing. It suppresses ADH hormone, and that allows you to become more of it suppresses anti-diuretic hormone. So you go to the bathroom a lot, and therefore, with that happening, you dehydrate yourself. So now you have this load of protein with dehydration. Guess what? You develop gout. One of the other things is you basically are on a water pill, so you can get the triple threat, right? You go out to, you take your water pill in the morning, you live in the desert where it's a little drier, you decide to go to a 4th of July barbecue, you have a little bit of good barbecue and a lot of beer, and the next thing you know, you wake up and your big toe's swollen. So that's gout. So that's what can happen a lot in this particular environment. When that happens, we have to usually assess where that comes from. Were you on a medication that promoted that? Did you just get dehydrated? Is your diet poor in that respect? So either you're an overproducer or an undersecretor, meaning your kidneys do not secrete that uric acid out. So if you're on a water pill, you're going to reabsorb it. Therefore, you become an undersecretor. You reabsorb that salt and you never really get rid of it. And it's like everything else, the normals are about 5, 4 point something to about 8. Now, there is a medication I prescribe a lot called probenecid, and it used to be given with penicillin to make penicillin last longer in your body. But probenecid helps to excrete uric acid and turn on that excretion system in your kidneys. Very useful to help preventing gout. The only problem with that is that if you form kidney stones, you do not want to be on probenecid because a lot of the kidney stones have a nidus for uric acid, meaning uric acid forms a little crystal in your renal tubule, and the next thing you know, you got some calcium deposit on that and you develop a kidney stone. So you've just traded one form of pain for the next. So make sure that if you've had a kidney stone, you do not want to be on probenecid. And hopefully that explains a little bit about gout. Not usually a wintertime disease, but it certainly can be. We don't have the heat that dehydrates us. One of the things that comes up sometimes is fluid balance, and when we talk about fluids, and I see people coming out of the hospital with congestive heart failure and another thing like that. And suffice to say, there's one little known fact that happens a lot, and that's what we call insensible losses of fluid. Fluid that we don't see coming out of our body. We lose it through our skin and we lose it through our breath. And that's usually about 250 to about 400 cc's a day. So that means that would be the equivalent of an Arrowhead bottle of water that we lose through our skin and we lose through our breath. So for a lot of people that have congestive heart failure or fluid problems, you want to try and balance your fluid. And one of the ways you do that is usually most of the doctors will tell you to weigh every day. And if there are 8 pounds to a gallon, and if you gain 2 pounds, you've gained 1/4 of a gallon. And it's very important that you jump on top of that so that you don't, once that water starts to add on, and it adds on quickly, you could stretch your heart and go back into congestive heart failure. And as I've said before on the show, the heart is a very interesting muscle in that it basically has what is known as Starling's law, which is that you can extend your muscle fibers to the point of contraction, meaning the more I extend the fibers, the stronger the contraction. When I reach a point where I stretch them too far, I've overdone the Starling's law, and I do not get a maximal contraction. That is where congestive heart failure sets in, because we stretch our heart with fluid and our vessels don't really expand very much, and all of a sudden we've now gone past the point of no return and we have this heart that doesn't pump very much blood. Well, what do the kidneys do? And I've talked about this before, that the kidneys do not have eyes to the outside world. They were meant to protect us in drought. So if your heart function starts to decrease, then your kidneys think you're dehydrated because they don't see the blood flow that they once did, and so they start to retain salt and water. So guess what? We got a vicious cycle going on. We decrease our pump function, we start to regain salt and water, kidneys hold on to that, and next thing you know, we're in the hospital being very short of breath because we went from being just a little short of breath and a little bit of fluid to fluid overload and congestive heart failure. So Uh, very important to know that when you're trying to balance your fluid, you can do the simple thing of checking your weight, or you can do the more complex thing, which is what we call chronic or really strict input-output, which means you measure every drop of urine that you make, and you basically drink no more than you urinated in the previous 24 hours to get yourself to become slowly diuresed. So from 8 a.m. to 8 a.m., I made 1,000 cc's of urine. I can only drink 1,000 cc's of water to be balanced. But if I want to be perfectly balanced, then I would drink 1,200 to 1,300 cc's of water, so that I accounted for the insensible losses. So that means that if you didn't take a drop of water in your body, you would still make urine for a while, even though it would concentrate, and you would eventually dehydrate because you would lose it through your skin. That's why it doesn't seem right, but when you're in the desert, sometimes staying out and sweating, you have this bulk of clothes on to basically try and preserve that extensible loss through your skin. And evaporation is what cools us off in the summertime. If you are in a hot place with no air, you will literally just pour the water out of your system trying to cool yourself. So we're going to go to break here and come back to the last segment. And I thank you very much for tuning in. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Reiner, your host of the Independent Doctors of Pahrump, a TV show that airs Monday night on Channel 46. I want to remind you that I am a practicing physician in Pahrump, and I'm an independent practitioner, which means I am not bought by any insurance company or corporate medicine. We provide the highest level of care. We have nurse practitioners. We have other physicians, specialists who come to our office. Please come visit me. I'm at 1316 East Calvada here in the heart of Pahrump. Thank you.